Hello, everyone, and welcome back to More Than a Muse. I'm Stauney.
And I'm Sadie. Happy Pride Month from More Than a
Yes.
Muse, officially. I feel like we're being pretty intentional with the artists that we're choosing to cover this month because we have to celebrate, of course. Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge that from the beginning. Last week's episode was an interview, which, by the way, if you haven't listened to last week's episode, please go check it out because Stephanie's book comes out tomorrow, the 10th. So if you're listening on Monday when this episode comes out, it'll come out tomorrow. Odds are you might be listening and the book is already out in the world. So please go check it out. You could get the interview. Anyways, just had to put in one last plug for that just because I loved her book so much.
I know. It's such a good book. Highly recommend. And then, pick up a copy and then see also if she's coming to a city near you, you could go get it signed.
Mm-hmm.
She's been putting out some tour locations and dates.
And I also realized we should probably say the name of the book. It is Art Above Everything.
Oh, yeah.
But we just assume that everyone is listening to every episode so that you already knew that. So
what do you mean that you
what
only
do you
listen
mean you
to
didn't
ones
know?
you search? What?
Yeah.
If you are only listening to this one because you're the person that we're covering, welcome. Please listen to other episodes. We have a lot, and we're happy to continue sharing about people that you've never heard of before until now.
Exactly. And today we're talking about Dusty Springfield, which, did you know who Dusty Springfield was before I brought her to you today?
No, I didn't. I will admit, I don't usually know who the person is at all when Sadie talks about them. I did Google her earlier today because I was like, get a kickstart on figuring out what everything's going to look like. So I do know a little bit. And I have to say, I'm very fascinated. She sounds like a very irreverent, lovely, rageful human being.
Yes, she does indeed. And I'll actually admit, I didn't know about her really either. Except for this last week, I finally was introduced to her because I started a new job. It's a little bit more of a quiet corporate environment. And so I have a lot of quiet time where I'm just like listening to music on my headphones while I'm working. And I was like, if I'm going to be just sitting here listening to music, maybe I should start making my way through what's considered the biggest, best albums of all time. And so I just Googled, because I know Rolling Stones has their like 500 best albums ever. And I was scrolling through. I think her album made their top 100 and was just scrolling through and saw that this one was in it, her album Dusty in Memphis. So hadn't ever heard that, started listening. And then later that week, I did some Googling to figure out who I'm going to research and Googled LGBTQ women artists. And boom, Dusty Springfield, I see her name again. And I was like, there we go. This is very serendipitous. And it's one of those things where it's like, once a woman artist that seems to not be given the recognition she deserves, once you see her one place, it's so much easier to find her other places. And then you realize she's been there all along. You just did not have the eyes to see.
Yes, I love that. Also wanted to mention that I saw very immediately that her 13th studio album was titled Reputation.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? I was indeed going to mention that she had an album named Reputation, and it was also the 13th album. I don't know if Taylor Swift is up on her Dusty Springfield knowledge, but I I thought that was pretty
There's no way that
fun.
She didn't Google other albums named Reputation before, right? Taylor loves history. But yeah,
the Swiftie in me made note of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
As I was doing my research. Another thing with Dusty Springfield is she had a very long career. To be honest, a lot of her career was her kind of struggling to get her career back to certain pinnacle points. And there's going to be a lot of albums and a lot of work and a lot of like singles that I'm not going to name every single album. There's 13 albums. And so there's just no way that in a 45-minute episode we're going to go into great lengths of all of them. But I just wanted to point that out, is that this woman seems so incredibly fascinating that I'm just providing a snapshot here. And there's so much more incredible work that she did. And I'm also not going to touch a lot on her personal life, but I will mention that it is like marred by unfortunate, sad things. So just a quick trigger warning. We're never going to go into any detail. We're just going to mention some things that she went into, but I'll talk about that after her career. So if you just want to hear about this cool career that this woman's had, like I said, we'll go there and I'll just make note of it when we're going to start talking about her personal life. But
cool.
Anything else?
I don't think so. Tell us about Dusty.
Cool. Dusty Springfield was born, of course, Mary Isabel Catherine Bernadette O'Brien
That is a lot of names.
Name. I know. But of course, she's better known for her stage name, which is Dusty Springfield. She was a British singer and had a very distinctive mezzo-soprano voice. She was a very popular singer of blue-eyed soul, pop, and dramatic ballads, but she also sang like French chanson. Country, jazz was also in her repertoire. She had her peak in the 1960s, and she ranked among the most successful British female performers on both sides of the Atlantic during that time in the 1960s. She had a very like signature look, blonde beehive hair, just the classic 60s look, heavy makeup, thick black eyeliner, eyeshadow, evening gowns, just a swinging 60s icon, which we've talked a lot about women from the swinging 60s. We've covered that time period a whole lot because they're all so iconic. We love the swinging 60s.
Yeah, the 60s are very iconic.
So she was born in 1939 in West Hampstead. She was the second child of Gerard Anthony O'Brien and Catherine Ann K. O'Brien, who were both Irish immigrants. Her father actually grew up in British India and worked as a tax accountant and a consultant, and her mother came from an Irish family originally from Tralee, County Kerry, and included a number of journalists. Grew up in Buckinghamshire, lived there until the early 1950s. Later in West London, she went to Catholic school, just a pretty comfortable, middle-class, normal upbringing, to be honest. From like her biographies, though, it seems like her father was a pretty intense perfectionist, and her mother's frustration sometimes resulted in food throwing incidents, which is something that's made note of because Dusty Springfield and her brothers were both apparently prone to food throwing as adults, and so I guess they got that from their mother.
Yeah, you learn it somewhere.
You learn it somewhere. And she was actually given the nickname Dusty from a very young age because she played football with the boys in the streets and she was described as being a tomboy. So they called her Dusty. But she grew up in a very music-loving family. Her father tapped out rhythm on the back of her hand, encouraged her to guess which musical piece had the beat. She listened to just a wide range of music, including George Gershwin, Rodgers and Hart, Rodgers and Hammerstein, Cole Porter, Count Basie, Duke Ellington, Glenn Miller. Just was a fan of American jazz and vocalist Peggy Lee. She wanted to sound like them, which I think when you listen to her, you can immediately see the references there. And at age 12, she recorded herself performing at the Irving Berlin song When the Midnight Choo Choo Leaves for Alabama, and she recorded it at a record shop in Ealing. Just from a very young age, it seems like she was drawn to music, which is really cool. She graduated from school, and she sang with her brother Tom in local folk clubs. They worked together at holiday camps, and in the next year, they responded to an advertisement in the stage to join the Lana Sisters, which is an established sister act. I said they, I meant she did this. And the Lana Sisters was with Iris Riss Long, also known as Riss Lana or Riss Chantel, and Lynn Abrams, aka Lynn Lana, who were not actually sisters, but that was their act, is that they were the Lana Sisters. And she adopted the name Shan Lana and cut her hair, lost the glasses, and experimented with makeup and became one of the sisters. And so she became a member of one of these pop vocal trios. And in this, she learned a lot. She harmonized, learned microphone technique. They recorded, performed on television, played at live shows in the United Kingdom and on U.S. Air Force bases in continental Europe, which I thought was really cool. So she was with them for a number of years, and then in 1960 she left the Lana Sisters and officially formed a folk pop trio, the Springfields, with Tom and Reshad Field. They both had been in the Kensington Squares. Anyways, the trio chose their names while rehearsing in a field in Somerset in the springtime and took the names Dusty, Tom, and Tim Springfield because they wanted to make a US album, and I think they just thought, oh, this sounds like a folk name. And to be fair, Dusty Springfield, Tom Springfield, and Tim Springfield, they sound like they would make a folk album in America. Those names fit it very well.
That's very fair.
They actually traveled to Nashville to record folk songs from the hills, and the music Springfield heard during the visit, particularly The Exciters Tell Him, She actually went to New York, and it really influenced her shift from folk and country towards pop rooted in rhythm and blues, because she went to New York City, heard some singers, and was like, oh, wait, I want to make music like that. But their folk trio was pretty successful. The band was voted for the top British vocal group in this New Musical Express poll in 1961, 1962. They hit pretty big waves in 1963 with songs Island of Dreams and Say I Won't Be. They peaked at number 5 within 5 weeks of each other in the UK, and they appeared on like different TV shows together. Yeah, they just like actually were like doing a really good job at this group together. But then Dusty left the band after their final concert in October 1963. After the breakup, Tom continued songwriting and producing for artists, and he would write additional songs for Dusty. Most famously, like in 1964, she had a hit called Losing You that they released and wrote together. But anyways, so she leaves this folk trio and decides to go on a solo career. Her very first solo single was called I Only Want to Be With You, and it came out in November of 1963. This record was produced by Johnny Franz in a manner similar to Phil Spector's Wall of Sound. With a lot of the people that we've talked about from the swinging 60s, I feel like the name Phil Spector just comes up a lot, and he was just a big old music producer from that time, but included rhythm and blues features like horn sections, background singers, and double track vocals with strings, and recalling that her influencers such as the Exciters and the Shirelles, like she referenced that music that she heard when she was in New York with making her first single. And in January of 1964, the single peaked at number 4 on the UK charts and was on the charts for 18 weeks, which is a really long time. In December of 1963, New York disc jockey Dandy Dan Daniel. What a great radio name, mind you. Dandy Dan Daniel. Incredible work. She had a single called Sure Shot, and he picked it as of records not yet charted, but it was like preceding Beatlemania, which is something that's just like fun to note at this time. Like she's coming up right when the Beatles is happening, and I'm not sure if it like helped her at all, because it was like, oh cool, let's pay attention to music that's coming from the UK, or if it was like hard to be noticed at all when literally the Beatles is happening, and it's like probably hard to cement your stardom when literally the biggest band of all time is on the come up right now.
She does have quite a few songs that are recognizable, I think. So maybe it did help and hurt in a lot of ways. It might have been one of those
I don't know,
give and take situations.
Yeah, in some ways it's good, maybe not. I don't know. But the single debuted on Billboard's Hot 100 on the chart a week after the debut of the Beatles' first hit, I Wanna Hold Your Hand, and in the same week as the debut of She Loves You, which kind of put her at the forefront of the British invasion. So I think in this way it like helped, because it like suddenly everyone was like, wait, what is going on over there? And so they were more willing to put her on the chart, literally right at the same time as the Beatles. I Only Want to Be With You peaked at number 12, ranked 48 in the year-end 100. Like, it was just doing really well. And she went on the BBC, performed, things like that. But her debut solo album called A Girl Called Dusty featured mostly covers of her favorite songs and was released April 17th in the UK and then in May in America. And the album reached number 6, so it was really successful, had 5 more singles chart in 1964. And really, this part of her career is really just a lot of it was in the UK. Like, she was just blowing up immediately. And the transition to, like, US fame was just a little bit trickier. But something that she said about herself and her songwriter is, quote, I don't really see myself as a songwriter. I don't really like writing. I just don't get any good ideas. And the ones I do are pinched from other records. The only reason why I write is for the money. Oh, mercenary creature, which I thought that was fun. It's so real funny. Because when you're the songwriter on your songs, you also get the publishing. So you get some royalties from it. So it is an incentive for writers to write their own work.
That makes sense, talked about actually. A lot. Yeah, we've talked a lot about the switch from expecting singers to just be singers to all of a sudden expecting them to be songwriters and that actually is like a very good explanation for it. That it would be like, oh, that extra credit gives you more money. So therefore, why wouldn't you sit in on a songwriting session and change a word or two?
To try a new one. Exactly. Yeah. Because it helps you get more money. And if you're going to be out touring the songs, might as well be getting extra pennies for it.
Yeah, I can't fault them for that.
In the autumn of 1964, she peaked at number 41 in the United States with All Cried Out, but in the UK, she hit big with a song called Losing You. It hit number 9 in the UK, but only 91 in the US. Just not a huge thing. But she went on tour, actually in tour in South Africa with her group, The Echoes, which before we started recording, you asked about this. So this
Yeah.
tour that she went on was terminated following a controversial performance before an integrated audience at a theater show in Cape Town in defiance of the government's segregation policy. So because of this, she was deported because her contract specifically excluded segregated performances while making her one of the first British artists to do so, which is incredible that
Yeah.
she
Like,
was brave
imagine
enough to do
being
that.
canceled for not being racist.
Not like deported. Like she was
Yeah.
kicked out of that country because she was willing to perform in front of a segregated audience.
Good
And
for her.
I know, just a really cool stance that she took. And unfortunately, you don't always see that with
Oh,
people.
I guess
And it was
a
very brave.
desegregated audience, right?
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. The
Yeah,
government
you're good.
required it be segregated. She said, everyone can come to my show.
Mm-hmm.
She performed for an integrated audience, and that was in
Okay.
rejection of the segregation policy. Thank you for making
Yes.
sure I said that correctly, because that is
Yeah.
categorically very
Yeah.
different. But in that same year, she was voted the year's top British female singer in the New Musical Express, ahead of all these others, and she won an award again for the next 3 years because she was just huge. Everyone loved her. She started singing like Italian song festivals, did competitions in Italy, which I thought was like really cool, and was really drawn to that, and would do English versions of them, which I thought was really cool. They'd have people write new lyrics to them. Her dramatic recordings of the ballad these ballads, and it was released in March 1966, reached number 1 in the UK in its 5th week on the singles chart, and it followed in the US, where in July it reached number 4 on Billboard's Hot 100. Like, I think that's a cool thing about her, where like she'll go to Italy and hear the song and be like, that's beautiful, I love it. She'll just appreciate the art and then make it her own and then bring it to where she's from, and then it goes into the US. Like, it just seems like she had such good taste and
Yeah.
was willing to share, but I share that, but I also think she did a really good job at also always giving the credit that was rightfully deserved, and we'll talk more about that a
That's
little
good.
bit later. Honestly, it was just like huge. Like, at this point, I'm just like, and then that hit the top 10, and then that hit the top 10. Like, the 60s were a great time for Dusty Springfield's career, is basically the main point. In 1967, she was nominated for the Best Contemporary Solo Vocal Performance award at the 9th Annual Grammy Awards, and she actually lost to Paul McCartney for Eleanor Rigby, which,
Well,
again, that's what happens when you come up at the same time as the Beatles, is you lose to
yeah.
Eleanor Rigby, which is just such a
I
shame
mean, yeah. But
because
a
that's an
little
amazing song.
understandable, not gonna lie. That is an
Yeah,
incredible song. So
exactly.
I guess we'll allow it.
We'll allow it. Oh, I thought this was so beautiful. So she gave a performance for the BBC Radio, and there's this quote about it. So it says, there, standing on the staircase of Philip's studio, singing into the stairwell, Dusty gave her greatest ever performance. Perfection from first breath to last. As great as anything by Aretha Franklin or Sinatra or Pavarotti. Great singers can take mundane lyrics and fill them with their own meaning. This can help a listener's own ill-defined feelings come clear into focus. Vicky Wickham and I only had thought our lyrics were about avoiding emotional commitment. Dusty stood it on its head and made it a passionate lament of loneliness and love. So that was actually the songwriter of that song, You Don't Have to Say You Love Me. And his name was
Oh.
Simon Napier Bell. And I just thought that was really beautiful. The notion of that is the power of incredible singers. And that's been, I think, the main part of the conversation when you've talked about like how there's a different standard for singers to be amazing songwriters as well. When no, it is an incredible art form to be able to take lyrics and give them such voice and meaning and to make it something more than what it is. And that's what a great singer and a great performer can do, is they can take
Mm-hmm.
these songs that are written and they can really turn them into something even more beautiful and have even more of a lasting impression. And I think it's interesting now. I think we focus so much on the songwriting and who did it, where maybe that doesn't matter, as long as the message is coming across and how you feel after
Yeah,
that. That's the point. And I thought that was a
definitely.
beautiful way to describe her.
No, I love that.
Also, to compare her to Aretha Franklin, Sinatra, and Pavarotti, who are like universally known as some of the best singers of all time. And Dusty
Mm-hmm.
Springfield, I don't think she's not in those same topics of conversation constantly when you're talking about the best vocalists of all time. And I just thought it was really cool that he was like, no, it was just as good of anything that they've done, and it was perfection from first to last breath. Just thought that was beautiful.
Man, the performance.
During this period in the 60s too, she also was known to love Motown, and she was very like outwardly outspoken about that. And she introduced the Motown sound to a wider UK audience, both with her covers of Motown songs, but also by facilitating the first UK TV appearance for The Temptations, The Supremes, and Martha and the Vandellas, The Miracles, and Stevie Wonder in a special edition of the 1963-66 British TV music series Ready, Set, Go that was produced by Vicky Wickham. So those are incredible names. And she facilitated them being on the UK, like in the UK TV experience. That was her who made that happen. And I think that's just like an incredible way to use your power for the good.
Yes, definitely.
The Sound of Motown was broadcasted on April 28th of 1965. And she opened each half accompanied by Martha and the Vandellas and Motown's in-house band, the Funk Brothers. And they associated touring Talma Motown Revue featuring the Supremes, the Miracles, and Stevie Wonders, and started in London in March and was, according to the Supremes' Mary Wilson, a flop, which is really sad. Quote, "It's always disheartening when you go out there and when you see the house is half full. But once you're on stage, you perform as well as for 5 as you do for 500. So it's like unfortunate that like that show didn't sell well, but I still think that it's really cool that Dusty Springfield was like, no, you guys, I found these incredible musicians and you're not giving them the credit they deserve for reasons that we all know because of how they look. So enough of that. Let me bring them to your TV. Let me show you how incredible these artists are. And Stevie Wonder, of course, is now known as the biggest artist of all time. And I'm not going to say thanks to Dusty Springfield, but like it's just cool that she got to play a part in his story of
definitely
bringing him onto UK TV. Not that was the reason why he is who he is now, but still, it's just cool.
No, very cool. And I think shows the kind of person that she is.
And also to say, yeah, I'm going to cover these songs, but I'm also going to make sure you can see the people who was originally singing them.
Yes.
You know, which look at Elvis.
He's going to say that. Yeah.
He's like, took the songs. Like Elvis. I know that the movie that came out a couple years ago loves to make the argument that actually he was doing amazing things for communities because he did this, but I don't like give me a little bit more proof. I don't have
that much faith in Elvis. Let me just say that much.
I don't like Elvis. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't either.
Sorry.
His own wife was like, "Ooh, that was propaganda. Let's release Priscilla."
Sorry, listener, if you are a big Elvis fan. We've done an episode of the women behind Elvis. And unfortunately, by the end of that episode, neither one of us were very big Elvis fans. It was
You can like the music, but to be honest, like I like it more in the context of the Lilo and Stitch movie rather than like actual Elvis.
Yeah.
So I think it's how many times do we have to have the conversation about separating the art from the artist? It's not entirely possible. But we can just agree that we hate Elvis every time he comes up.
Yeah, that's what. One thing you can count on this podcast is us casually mentioning Elvis Presley and then us going on a 5-minute rant about how we don't like that man.
Do not like him.
If we're one thing, we're consistent.
I know. We need t-shirts like I hate Elvis Presley Club.
Wear that in Memphis, I dare ya. Anyways. Okay, we're moving past Elvis. Is where we're at. By the late 1960s, Dusty in Memphis comes out, which is the album that made the greatest albums of all time list. But by the late 1960s, Carole King, who with Jerry Goffin co-wrote Some of Your Lovin', Going Back, and 4 songs on the Dusty in Memphis album, had embarked on a solo singing career, which, side note, I don't know how I haven't done a Carole King episode yet. She's my favorite of all time. Coming soon, whatever. Going on, though. At the same time, though, that Carole King left, Springfield's relationship with the high-charting Bacharach David partnership was floundering. Her status in the music industry was further complicated by a progressive music revolution, which dedicated on... The point is, what I'm trying to say, I was going to read the complicated, like, technical quote here, but basically what was happening is there was a lot of progressive music happening in the 60s and 70s, and she had a very classic sound, right? And not dated, I don't want to say that, but it was very much just like the pop typical thing. And late 60s and 70s, underground, weird music was very popular. And so it was an awkward point for her to be in her career. And she was pretty much at this point just in the UK touring circuit of like men's clubs, hotels, cabaret. So she really wanted to reinvigorate her career and to boost her own credibility, to make her way back into these US markets. So she signed with Atlantic Records, to which, by the way, at the same time was the label of Aretha Franklin, who was one of her idols. And she only signed this record label in the United States. And the Memphis sessions at the American Sound Studio were produced by Jerry Wexler, Tom Dowd, and Eric Martin, and the backup vocal band Sweet Inspirations and the instrumental band the Memphis Boys. And they were being led by guitarist Reggie Young and bass guitarist Tommy Cogbill. Basically, the producers just recognized that Springfield's natural soul voice should be placed at the forefront rather than competing with all the string arrangements. And I guess that at first she felt really anxious because she was compared with just like these soul greats who recorded in that same studio. And again, like, I'm not saying, oh, it's a good thing that she was anxious, but I do think that she just had a lot of respect for her idols and knew how incredible musicians they were. She'd also never worked with just a rhythm track. It was her first time with outside producers. Many of her previous recordings had been just self-produced while not being credited, which is, of course.
Yeah.
But I thought this was like nice that the producer felt that Dusty had a gigantic inferiority complex. And also, due to her pursuit of perfection, her vocals were re-recorded later in New York. But November of 1968, during the Memphis session, Springfield suggested to Wexler, one of the heads of Atlantic Records, wait for this, that he should sign the newly formed UK band Led Zeppelin, because she knew their bass guitarist John Paul Jones from his session work on her earlier albums. Without ever having seen them, and partly on her advice, so I won't give full credit to Dusty Springfield, but partly on her advice, he signed Led Zeppelin to a $200,000 deal with Atlantic, the biggest such contract for a new band until then. Crazy. Like, my point is, this girl had taste.
Yeah. I think what you said earlier about her just having incredible taste is, it sounds like she just knew what was good.
She knew what was good. Like, how, like, the fact that she was the first person to say, hey, Stevie Wonder, come to UK TV because I have a feeling about you. Hello. And then Led Zeppelin, because she knew the bass guitarist. That is a good bass guitarist. You need to sign this band.
A good band. Yeah.
And she was right.
She was right.
Incredible. But she recorded this album called Dusty in Memphis because she was Dusty and she went to Memphis to record, or she was with the Memphis band to record this music. And it received excellent reviews on its initial release, both in the UK and the US. Grail Marcus of Rolling Stone said, most of the songs have a great deal of depth while presenting extremely direct and simple statements about love. Dusty sings about her material, creating music that's evocative rather than overwhelming. Dusty is not searching, she just shows up, and she and we are better for it. What a beautiful thing to say about someone's work.
Nice. Would you say that she wrote mainly sad music?
That's a good question. I think that when you listen to her music, you can feel so much longing in it.
Okay. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, but even when the songs are maybe like upbeat, you still feel that. She's just really good. You should listen to this album. I would recommend it.
I'm going to have to. Yeah.
What's unfortunate, though, is that the commercial and chart success of this album did not immediately follow. It failed to enter in the UK, and in April of 1969, it hit number 99 on Billboard's Top 100. But what's crazy is that by the year 2001, the album had received the Grammy Hall of Fame award and was listed among the greatest albums of all time by Rolling Stones and by many other things, by many other outlets. So November 1968. So this is before the album comes out. The album's lead single, Son of a Preacher Man, was issued. And this song became an international hit. It reached number 9 in the UK charts, number 1 on Billboard Hot 100 in January of 1969. In Europe, the single reached the top 10, like all over in like Austria. It was everywhere. So then in 1970, Springfield was nominated for the Best Contemporary Vocal Performance Female Award at the 24th Annual Grammy Awards, but she lost to Peggy Lee. But I don't think she was probably too upset about that because that's one of her biggest influences. In 1987, Rolling Stone magazine placed the single at number 77 in its critics list of the 100 best singles of the last 25 years. 2002, the record ranked number 43 in the 100 greatest singles of all time. 43? That's crazy. And in 2004, Rolling Stones ranked it 240 in its list of 500 greatest songs of all time. Son of a Preacher Man found a new audience when it was included on the soundtrack on Quentin Tarantino's 1994 film Pulp Fiction. And the soundtrack reached number 21 on Billboard's chart. And it is thought that Son of a Preacher Man contributed to the sales of the soundtrack album, which sold more than 2 million copies in the US.
I didn't know that. A phenomenal soundtrack.
I've only seen it once, and it was like a long time ago, so I don't remember. But when it first came out, Dusty Springfield, it was like not as big as, oh my gosh, what is that Kate Bush song? Rolling Up the Hill? No.
Oh, yeah, Running Up the Hill.
Yes. Not as big as what happened there, but like she had her moment because it was featured in a Quentin Tarantino film, and it probably just was like such the perfect placement that people are like, what is this song? But anyways, this song helped her get back on, even though technically originally the album didn't do amazing. That song was just so huge and is considered one of the biggest songs of all time, which is like crazy to me that she isn't so much of a household name now, is like considered one of the greats. Maybe I'm sure like then she was much more of a name.
Yeah, it's always weird to see the ones that last longer.
And the ones that don't. Yeah.
And the ones that don't. I don't entirely know what the difference is because I know that song. I knew that song before you did this episode. Like I can sing the little tune, not of all of it, but at least part of it in my head.
You know the song.
But I don't think I ever would have been like, oh yeah, The Son of the Preacher Man by Dusty Spring. I wouldn't know the name. Yeah.
But by the beginning of the 1970s, she was a major star through her records, but her record sales were still declining. Her partner, Norma Tanega, had returned to the U.S. after their relationship had become stressful. She was spending more time in the U.S. herself. In January 1970, her second and final album on Atlantic Records, A Brand New Me, that was retitled Dusty with Love in the UK, was released. It only sold moderately, and she was unhappy with both her management and her record company. I feel like at this point, she just went on some side quests. Like she sang backing vocals with her friend on 2 tracks for Elton John's album that came out in 1971. She recorded some songs with producer Jeff Barry in early 1971, which were intended for an album to release. But then she got a new manager and negotiated her out of it. It seems like a lot of messy industry stuff while she was trying to figure out her career. In 1974, she put her solo music career on hold, lived as a recluse in the U.S., because this is just sad. She was avoiding scrutiny by UK tabloids because in the early 1960s and early 1970s, the gay or bisexual performers just knew that being out would lead to intense media attention and loss of record contracts potentially. Yeah. And the tabloids became obsessively interested in the contents of what was going on in celebrities' lives. And so I think she just got tired of it and decided to become a recluse because she didn't want that to all go public, which I don't blame her. And she didn't record again for another 3 years. And then in 1977, she recorded It Begins Again, which was another album that she did. Throughout the 80s, she just continued to work and do music and try to revive her career and release different singles, TV appearances that they didn't chart or anything, but she was just working a lot. In 1987, though, she had a bit of a career resurgence. She accepted an invitation from the Pet Shop Boys to duet with their lead singer, Neil Tennant, on their single, What Have I Done to Deserve This? Because he cites Dusty in Memphis as one of his favorite albums, and he leapt at the suggestion of using Springfield's vocals for What Have I Done to Deserve This? And she also appeared in the promotional video, and it did really well, hit number 2 in both the US and the UK. It appeared on their album and on both artists' greatest hits collections. And she sang the lead vocals on the Richard Carpenter song Something in Your Eyes that was featured on his first solo album, which is just, again, almost like a funny side quest there.
Yeah. And I don't listen to his solo albums. Sorry.
But
I love the Carpenters.
And that just did well on the adult charts. She recorded a duet with BJ Thomas, As Long as We Got Each Other, which was used at the opening theme song for a US sitcom, Growing Pains, in the 60s, in the 80s. She was doing a lot of work again. And in 1990, her album Reputation was her third UK top 20 studio album, her 13th album, like you said. The writing and production credits for half the album, which included the 2 recent hit singles, went to the Pet Shop Boys, while the album's other producers include Dan Hartman, which I thought was interesting. So she obviously really liked working with the Pet Shop Boys. And I think it's cool that like they cited one of her albums as their favorite one and then ended up working on music together. By 1988, she had left California, and when recording tracks for Reputation, she returned to UK to live. I just love like being like, Reputation.
I know.
Like,
when
you
she
go,
was
Dusty.
recording Reputation, she returned to the UK.
Yep. These are crazy. What are we
talking about?
I know. Taylor Swift or Dusty Springfield?
We'll turn everything into a Taylor Swift reference, but come on, 13th studio album named Reputation.
Exactly. 2 things you can count on every More Than a Muse podcast. Little light Elvis hate and light Taylor love. What can you say? We are who we are. The last studio track that she recorded was George and Ira Gershwin's song Someone to Watch Over Me in London in 1995, funnily enough, for an insurance company TV ad. But it was included in the Simply Dusty 2000, an anthology that she had helped plan. And her final performance was on the Christmas with Michael Ball special in December of 1995. According to the Australian film director, Emma Kate Croghan, she personally approved the use of her song Of the Look of Love in the 1999 film Strange Planet just days before her death in March of 1999. So she was just working.
Yeah.
Had so much, like making so much music and recording. But just to know about her personal life. So a recurring theme among like journalists and people who've talked about her, biographers and things, is that she had 2 personalities. She was the shy, quiet Mary O'Brien and the public face that she had created as Dusty Springfield. An editorial review of the Publishers Weekly of Valentine and Wickham's 2001 biography, Dancing with Demon, finds that, quote, the confidence Springfield exuded on vinyl was a facade, masking severe insecurities, addictions to drugs, drinks and drugs, bouts of self-harm, and fear of losing her career if exposed as a lesbian. Which is just tragic that had to be something that she had to be worried about. But Simon Bell, one of Springfield's session singers, disputed this whole 2 personality description and said it's very easy to decide that there are 2 people, Mary and Dusty, but they were the one person. Dusty was most definitely Dusty right to the end. In her early career, much of her odd behavior was seen as more or less in fun, described as a wicked sense of humor, including her food fights and hurling crockery downstairs. She had a great love of animals, particularly cats, and became an advocate for animal protection groups. She enjoyed reading maps and would intentionally get lost to navigate her way out. In the 1970s and early 1980s, Springfield's alcoholism and drug addiction affected her musical career, and she was hospitalized several times for self-harm and was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. She was never reported to be in a heterosexual relationship, and so that meant that the issue of her sexual orientation was raised frequently during her life by media outlets and things like that.
Yeah, they still do it today. So,
exactly. Yeah. From mid-1966 to the early 70s, she lived in a domestic partnership with fellow singer Norma Tananga. And then in early 1970s, Springfield told Ray Connolly of the Evening Standard, quote, many other people say I'm bent, and I've heard it so many times that I've almost learned to accept it. I know I'm perfectly as capable of being swayed by a girl as by a boy. More and more people feel that way, and I don't see why I shouldn't. But to say that in the 1970s was a really bold statement. Another thing that she said 3 years later, she told Chris Van Ness of the Los Angeles Press, people are people. I basically want to be straight. I go from men to women. I don't give a shit. The catchphrase is, I can't love a man. Now that's my hang up. To love, to go to bed, fantastic. But to love a man is my prime ambition. They frighten me. I felt like that's such an
they also
interesting
frighten
quote
me.
to unpack. Yeah, exactly. But obviously this is like a very like a thing that she wrestled with, and it's wrestled with in the sense of like, how does she talk about this in the media, and how does this not affect your career? And it's so sad that she felt like if it was exposed, it'd ruin her career. And the truth is, like, I don't think she was incorrect for fearing that.
Oh, definitely not. Like, it was it would have been a nightmare for her to navigate, even if she would have been able to survive the whole thing, like her career. Like, the press was brutal back then. Like, we talked about even how they were with just the Beatles' wives in one of our episodes, and it was like nightmare level, and then the actual stars themselves. So I can't even imagine what that would have done to her. But kind of life where you have to keep so much of you secret and constant fearing that it's gonna cause your entire downfall, that's not mentally helpful for you either.
And then when you do talk about I'm sure it's because these quotes were from like things that she would tell journalists, like planning your words perfectly to make sure people wouldn't get mad, but then also being like, why can't I? Why do I have to be ashamed of this? Like, more and more people feel that way. I don't see why I shouldn't. Like, why can't I?
No, very interesting.
In the 1970s and 80s, though, she became involved in several romantic relationships with women and that were not kept secret from the gay and lesbian communities. From 1970 to 1978, she had an off and on domestic relationship with Faye Harris, who was an American photojournalist. 1981, she had a 6-month relationship with singer-musician Carol Pope of the rock band Rough Trade. During periods, though, of like psychological and professional instability, her involvement in some intimate relationships were influenced by addiction and resulted in an episode of personal injury. She met an American actress at an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting in 1982. They moved in together in April of 1983. 7 months later, they exchanged vows at a wedding ceremony, which was not recognized under California law because it wasn't legal.
That went on before that happened.
Yeah. But apparently the pair had a very up and down relationship that led to an altercation with both being hospitalized, where her partner like hit Springfield in the mouth with a saucepan and knocked out her teeth. That required plastic surgery, and they separated within a couple of years.
It doesn't sound like that was a good relationship.
No, it's sad that I obviously never want like someone's tragedy to be like the forefront of our episodes and like the things they were dealing with in their lives. But it's sad to realize that like a lot of the times, like the ups and downs of the career are often matching the ups and downs of someone's personal life. And for someone to be like such an incredible, intentional artist like Dusty Springfield, and like we talked about, like just the taste level, like she knew what would be good and she made it herself, or she was able to help champion the other people who were just as good. And it's just sad to read about all of that side of everything too. But in January 1994, while recording her album A Very Fine Love in Nashville, she began to feel ill, and when she returned to England a few months later, her physicians diagnosed her with breast cancer. She received months of chemotherapy and radiation treatment, and her cancer was found to be in remission. But then the next year, she was set to promote the album, which was released that year. And by mid-1966, the cancer had returned, had vigorous treatments, but then she ended up passing away from that in 1999 at just the age of 59. So she really young that she ended up passing away. She was actually inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 2 weeks after her death. And her friend Elton John helped induct her into the Hall of Fame, declaring, "I'm biased, but I think she was the greatest white singer there ever has been. Every song she sang, she claimed as her own."
Oh, Elton.
Of the female singers of the British invasion, she made one of the biggest impressions on the U.S. market, scoring 18 singles in the Billboard Hot 100 from 1964 to 1970. Like 18 hit songs in 6 years is crazy.
Actually, like,
yes, to be in the Hot 100, including 6 in the top 20. It's like a hit song a year, basically. And Quentin Tarantino caused a revival of interest in her music in 1994 because of Pulp Fiction, which sold 3 million copies worldwide. In the same year, the documentary Dusty Springfield Full Circle, guests of her 1965 Sound of Motown show credited her efforts with helping to popularize U.S. soul music in the U.K., which is really cool. In 2008, country blues singer-songwriter Shelby Lynne recorded a tribute album featuring 10 of her songs as well as one original. And like I said, she's known to have brought many little-known soul singers to the attention of a wider UK record-buying audience when she hosted a special Motown show. And that was a really influential, incredible thing that she did, because it was, like I said, the first national TV performances for many top-selling Motown artists. So although her music was not directly associated with British music dance movement, Northern Soul, her efforts were just seen as such a contributing factor to the formation of that genre later. She's a cultural icon in the swinging 60s, where she was, quote, an instantly recognizable celebrity. In public and on stage, she developed a joyful image supported by the peroxide blonde, like I said, beehive hairstyle, panda-eyed mascara, She borrowed elements of her look from her blonde glamour queens such as Bridget Bardot and Catherine Deneuve and pasted them together to create her own signature look. By the 1990s, she became a camp icon with her ultra glamorous look, and this combined with her emotive vocal performance and won her a powerful and enduring following in the LGBTQ community. And she became like a prototypical female for drag queens and was presented in the roles of the Great White Lady of Pop and Soul and the Queen of Mods. Love it.
I love that. I think I saw a photo of someone dressed in drag as her on Drag Race. Yeah. Like she definitely has become that gay icon. Yeah.
In March 1999, she was actually scheduled to receive her award at Buckingham Palace as an officer of the Order of the British Empire, given for several services to popular music. But due to the recurrence of the singer's breast cancer, officials of Queen Elizabeth gave permission for the medal to be collected earlier in January, and it was presented to Springfield in the hospital with a small group of friends and relatives attending. She actually died on the day that she would otherwise have collected her award from the palace. So isn't that cool that like they were willing to do that so she could actually get the award while she was alive?
Yeah, that happened.
Various films and stage musicals have been created or proposed to commemorate her life. On January 12th of 2006, an Australian stage musical, Dusty, the original pop diva, received its world premiere at the Stage Theatre in Melbourne. There was also, like, I guess a lot of talks about a movie. Like, for a while, Nicole Kidman was involved, Kristen Chenoweth was involved, but it was happening kind of like through the 2010s, but like never really fully cemented into anything. So who knows? Maybe a Dusty Springfield biopic is on the way one day.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
In 2012, a biographical jukebox musical called Forever Dusty opened off Broadway in New York City. And in 2015, she was named by Equality Forum as being one of their 31 icons for the 2015 LGBT History Month. And just because it seems like this is the one thing that all of our artists we cover have in common, on November 8th of 2022, she was honored with a Google Doodle to celebrate her life and career.
Of course. Yeah. What is your career if you don't become a Google Doodle?
That is now something that you don't know that you have to, aspire to. Yeah. But if you get a Google Doodle, you know you've made it.
You've made it. No, it's a constant. I know they mean it as recognition, and it is helpful, but it happens to women artists.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's but they got a Google Doodle. That's one way they were recognized. Thanks, Google. We appreciate it.
We do. We appreciate it.
But it's funny.
We do find people through Google Doodles, so I won't bash them too much, but
that's true. It's just funny.
Yeah, it is.
Anyways, so there's Dusty Springfield. And like I said, I feel like I was just like talking so much. Obviously, I just presented a long episode, but like even still, I'm like, and I don't even think we were able to fully capture who Dusty Springfield is. I think you have to go watch her talk and listen to her sing to actually even get who she is. Like her especially, of a lot of the women we've covered, it's you can listen to her life, but no, like you need to go enjoy her art. Like you need to go like even just listen to Son of a Preacher Man again, and then you're being like, oh yeah, I get it now. Like I get what's going on here. And I just think it's such an incredible mark of a great artist where it feels like you don't know her until you've consumed her art.
Yeah.
Like it's not enough to just get the facts of someone's life. Like it feels empty. It's like, what am I telling you? I'm just telling you facts, and I'm telling you her albums were huge. That's great. No, go listen to the music, which granted is our hope all of the time.
Yeah,
with any artist that we share, the hope is that you learn about people here and then you're like, wait, I want to go check out their art now. And we're like, perfect. Now go do that. So anyways, there's Dusty Springfield for you.
Thank you. I'm excited to go and listen. Who is the voice behind a lot of these songs. And I'm especially excited to dive more into some more stories about her too. Like you said, I feel like scraping the surface so much because there's just so much about her. I saw that Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
Very long. So thank you for the introduction. I think that's perfect. And then now we all have to go and figure out more about Dusty ourselves.
Thanks for joining us for another More Than a Muse episode where you can learn so much about women artists. Thanks for being here. We'll be back next week.
We will, and we'll see you then. Bye.
Bye.